Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Krishna, and welcome to yet another episode of Unity in Diversity. My name is Bandhan Gopaldas, and we have with us once again His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu, who is the force behind the very successful Krishna House ashram-based preaching program in North America. We now have 7 active open Krishna House programs running today, and they're growing by leaps and bounds. So in today's discussion, we will be focusing on how Srila Prabhupada is the pivotal center of ISKCON. He's everything for ISKCON devotees. How there's sometimes we're seeing an alarming tendency to minimize Srila Prabhupada's position that we need to be concerned about and do something about, and what kind of solutions we may want to implement to follow the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, and how we can agree to follow the Vedic injunctions and so on. It's really a call for unity that we want to make. So Kalakantha Prabhu, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As we have been discussing various aspects of unity in diversity, could you kindly explain this from the point of view of accepting Srila Prabhupada as the unifying factor in ISKCON? Thank you.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya, which ensures his perpetual unique position in our society. And his presence is what brings people together, even today. If I may, could you share the photo that I sent you? In the early days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's presence was what drew us all together. And very diverse groups of people cooperated to establish and spread ISKCON all over the world. And in the Krishna House experience over the past 15 years, we have discovered that by keeping Prabhupada in the center, still young people from all diverse walks of life can become attracted and engaged in Krishna consciousness. You see in this picture how Prabhupada is right at the heart of everybody's smiling face here in this graduating photo from our class of 2022, taken a couple of months back. These are people from very diverse backgrounds, nationalities, education. We have everyone from high school dropout to a Harvard graduate in our class this year. We have Westerners, Indians, Spanish-speaking people. We have tall people, short people. You see, everybody's here with Prabhupada at the center. That's why I love this photo and want to share it with you this morning. But this amazing. This illustrates how ISKCON started and how ISKCON can continue if we keep Prabhupada in the center.
Yes, no, this is amazing. This is actually such a good visual example of how we can have a unified movement centered around Krishna, centered around Srila Prabhupada. And you can see right here that everyone's inspired by him. And like you said, the diversity is not just in their particular, say, ethnicities or even national background and language and so on, but we'll find diversity in deep-seated opinions. Some tend to be super conservative, some tend to be super liberal, some tend to be neither. They don't particularly care. Some tend to focus on certain parts of life as very important, but it doesn't really matter because Srila Prabhupada pulls everybody together. He is the singular, unifying, and inspiring force. And we see it happening here. It's actually so rare to get even 2 people to kind of work together. What to speak of someone in a big crowd from so many different backgrounds, you can see in different age groups and so on, to be happily working together. It's actually a sort of a miracle in this day and age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So thank you for sharing this photo. So Prabhu, you received Diksha from Srila Prabhupada himself in the 70s, and you had firsthand experience of being touched by his mercy. Could you perhaps share some of the aspects of how he affected you, touched your heart, and transformed your life?
Yes, Srila Prabhupada was so exciting and attractive for us young Westerners that we really flocked to him and took every opportunity to be with him. When Prabhupada came to Atlanta, for example, in 1975, he commented, "Everywhere I go, I smell fresh paint." These are hustling to make everything bright. It would be like these intense marathons, several-day marathons prior to Prabhupada's arrival. Devotees for that particular gathering came from all around the Southeast United States. And Srila Prabhupada began by saying, I've just come from Mexico City, Caracas, Miami, Los Angeles, but of all the temples, your temple is the best. And in that temple room, there were maybe 200 of us and maybe 10% from Atlanta, but we all cheered nonetheless, as if we were all. So there was just no sense of boundary. My temple, your temple. We all felt very unified in Prabhupada's service and very proud to be affiliated with this organization he was establishing.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. I mean, it's that you had that direct experience. So for someone like me, who didn't meet Prabhupada in person, but we still see it. Like when I first came into contact with Krishna consciousness in 1991, I was excited about the philosophy, the books, the Back to Godhead magazine. It was very impressive. The Sunday feast experience, the divine prasadam, and the enthusiasm of the devotees. It was the same everywhere, whether you went to India or Kenya or Europe. And so I was in Kenya at that time growing up. And what took me by surprise was their seemingly inordinate love for their founder. Because when I began, it's like, okay, if main thing is Krishna, the philosophy, I mean, it doesn't really matter if, who taught it, right? Why him? Why are you so excited about this one guru? There's so many others, it doesn't matter. He's like, interchangeable. But when I began to study Prabhupada's life and go deeper into his writings, and most of all, when I met devotees who had personally been touched by him and seeing the deep spark of joy when they remembered him, that's the time I had a personal transformation, seeing Prabhupada's heart through the eyes of his disciples. And you can just see the love sparkling in those eyes, So I remember once I asked a disciple of Prabhupada, very enthusiastically describing detail how Srila Prabhupada would care personally for his disciples in the early days of New York, and how he had the same level of deep love for them, even the later days of the movement. And it moved me to tears. It didn't change. His success didn't affect his love for each and every one. I watched so many memory series and read every book on his Leela by so many of his disciples. It became ingrained in my heart that if I could just follow Srila Prabhupada straight, as it is, as he said, I will know what is happiness, what love is, what spiritual bliss is, and so on. So Prabhupada is the root of our good fortune. I see that in ISKCON. I see it in the words and the feelings in the heart of his disciples. So could you share perhaps something about how Srila Prabhupada himself was the unifying factor during his pastimes, and also how he continues to be that today?
Well, one of the really prominent memories I have of Prabhupada playing this role was in 1976 when the Radha Damodar party was traveling throughout North America and very aggressively and successfully distributing books. When they would come to a temple, the brahmacharis in the temple would feel inclined to join them, and they would be encouraged to join them also. So the temple presidents objected, hey, we are preaching here in our town, we are training these young men, and then we need them to develop our temples and our communities. And so there was this controversy. The Radha Damodar team was saying, well, the dharma of a brahmachari is to travel with sannyasis. That's really what they're supposed to do, and not stay in a temple and serve temple president who are often grihastas. So this controversy came to Srila Prabhupada and in Mayapur in 1976, and he heard both sides, and then he sided with the temple presidents. He said that the devotees should stay where they were joining, and it had been a very hot topic, but when he gave his verdict, everybody was fine. Everyone was resolved. One sannyasi was then joking with Srila Prabhupada and said that Lord Ramachandra, he was so attached, he couldn't tolerate going to the forest without taking his wife. And Prabhupada immediately picked up on the joking mood, and he said to the sannyasi, just see the so-called sannyasi. No woman would marry him, so therefore he has taken sannyas. Prabhupada was a real person. He was compassionate. He cared about the disciples. ISKCON was his baby. He wanted it to grow in a healthy way. And like a loving father, he made everybody feel welcome and at home, and cared for, recognized, included. Nobody felt pushed out by Srila Prabhupada. That has only come after his departure, where such things have sometimes appeared. So we remain very united under him. And even today, ISKCON is united by Srila Prabhupada. It is in so many different countries around the world. It's miraculous how it is united. And it's just because of the respect that everyone shares for Srila Prabhupada. So we're convinced about Krishna consciousness that to the extent that Srila Prabhupada and his teachings have convinced us. And this is the role of the Acharya, particularly the founder Acharya of an institution, to keep his mood and his mission front and center in our own hearts. And the more we do that, the more we will find unity and we'll find common ground and we will work together, because it's a big world outside of ISKCON and that doesn't care a bit about ISKCON. So we need to stay together to navigate this Kali Yuga.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. And then, like you mentioned, if there's some difference in opinion between his disciples, his word would be the final closing word. You don't need to do some more research to see if you can support your, your side or your opinion, right? Nobody needed to do that. What Prabhupada said.
Absolutely. His word was like a Vedic injunction. It was the Vedic injunction, even if there might be contradictory statements found in the Vedas in various places. There was one occasion where Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and one sannyasi who was rather a academic type had been appointed temple president. And there was a visiting new sannyasi who was very charismatic, leading kirtans, fired up classes. So the devotees asked, why doesn't this new sannyasi become temple president? So Prabhupada called the two of them together, and he said to the new sannyasi, you're sannyas, you should be out traveling. Sannyas means traveling, preaching. You should be going town to town, sharing Krishna consciousness. And then he turned to the other sannyasi and said, and you stay here and manage Vrindavan. So everybody laughed because he's giving these contradictory instructions just on the spot. Nobody questioned. Nobody felt the need, but the Vedas say this and this and this. Prabhupada was the founder Acharya, and it was his decision to make. This kept us very unified. And that presence of Prabhupada keeps us unified today.
Yes, and we see that, like you mentioned, it's today. Even today, we see Prabhupada front and center in ISKCON. The Guru Puja we do, even newcomers who come, sometimes they wonder why you're worshiping a human, but eventually they realize this is not an ordinary human being, His Guru Puja, his books, even ISKCON law based on his quotes and his personal example. And I mean, he's the glue that keeps it all together.
Yes, Prabhu, if I may, again, referring back to that picture we saw a few minutes ago, these young men and women who are joining ISKCON there are disciples of at least a dozen different gurus in ISKCON. But it is amazing and wonderful to see how they become attached to Srila Prabhupada. We just teach this as we're discussing that Prabhupada is the real center. He is the preeminent Siksha Guru for us all. We read his books, we do his Guru Puja, and everyone very quickly, it's amazing to see how quickly people can become attached to Srila Prabhupada. Every day at lunch, we read the Prabhupada Lilamrita so people can learn about him, hear about him. It's one of also the first books we recommend to visitors. And they're so impressed with what Prabhupada has done that they become attracted just on the basis of his incredible personality and accomplishments.
Yeah, and this is something that very quickly becomes apparent. It just goes without saying, he is the person. We don't even need to have some sort of formal oath of allegiance, to Prabhupada. It comes so naturally. You can't imagine even the need to be there. That there could be anything higher than Prabhupada as an authority, which brings us to this concerning and alarming trend in ISKCON, where we are hearing certain senior devotees. These are senior devotees with high positions in ISKCON. They have titles. They've been in the movement for maybe 50 years or so. And in their open lectures saying things like how Srila Prabhupada is not the highest authority for ISKCON devotees, that we should look at Vedic injunctions as a topmost guide, or things like he's just a messenger, or statements like, we're not a personality cult, so we don't, the implication is we don't need to be so worshipful of everything Srila Prabhupada guided us on. Now we know that his place in ISKCON in Parampara is special. It is unique. He's not just another guru, but this is a development, and it's a trend that we're seeing. So it is disturbing, because down the line it could get pretty bad. So could you share some of your thoughts on this development? Is it new? Is it, where are we headed with this?
Right. We have the Vedic knowledge by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. So when Srila Prabhupada was ill in 1967, 68, he was in San Francisco, and his young disciple, Mukunda Das, came to him and said, Swamiji, if you happen to leave, can we go to one of your godbrothers for guidance? And Prabhupada was silent for a moment, and then a tear came to his eye. And he said, my Guru Maharaj was no ordinary Guru Maharaj. He saved me. So this notion that Guru is impersonal, the Vedic knowledge is impersonal, and therefore we can go around Srila Prabhupada if need be. It was heartbreaking to our founder Acharya, even the notion of that. But similarly, it should be heartbreaking to us to see Prabhupada's statements overruled by so-called Vedic injunctions. That is a misunderstanding of the philosophy. It's also a misunderstanding of the role of the disciple or the follower, particularly of the founder Acharya. There may be differences, just like the two sannyasis I mentioned earlier, different applications, but it's all personal. And Prabhupada is that person whose vision, whose directions are preeminent in our success in developing the movement that he so kindly left us.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. That was so touching, that example of Mukunda Maharaj, and how, that how can we even cross our mind that Prabhupada is one replaceable, or that, it doesn't really matter who is guiding us. It's all the same material. That this notion that he's, like you said, he's a person. We want Prabhupada's flavor of how to understand scripture. We want his emphasis, his mood, and his directives. And so the more we understand what he did, how he did things, and what he said, and so on, that's our Mahavakya. But like you mentioned, this is not something new. It happened even in Prabhupada's present. I was also reading some of this, that he had to deal with cases where his own disciples felt that they could override his explicit program with their scriptural discoveries. There's a devotee working in the Sanskrit department back in Los Angeles, and he found in the Bhagavad, he's a brahmachari, he found in the Bhagavatam that brahmachari should not listen to women singing. So then he decided to write to Prabhupada, and he asked that, we want to cancel this Yamuna Devi's morning tape of Govindam prayers, because it says right here, brahmachari shouldn't listen to women singing, and we should play Prabhupada your voice, if that's okay with you. And interestingly, Prabhupada wrote back. He says, my dear Sachinand Prabhu, Jai Sachinand Prabhu, please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge your receipt of your letter dated December 2nd, 1975. Then he says, no, with an exclamation point. Please accept my blessings, everything. No. He actually put an exclamation point in the letter. You have made some discovery. He's being sarcastic there. You've made some discovery. All along, you've been hearing the recording of Yamuna Devi, and now you want to change. It is not ordinary singing. It is concert. Many people are singing, so it is not bad. Just like Sankirtan, many voices are there, men and women. So it's the same thing. Sankirtan, I approve of it. Here in Krishna Balaram temple, we're hearing the same recording every morning. So if it's good here, why not there? I hope this letter finds you well. You're ever well-wisher. So unfortunately, this devotee, I mean, he used to be in the Sanskrit department, and shortly after this letter, we hear that he left the movement. So, somehow he couldn't recognize, or whatever happened, we don't know. But there are a couple of things here in this letter. From the tone and exclamation mark, that Srila Prabhupada was not pleased with the idea that someone would even consider that their own interpretation and application of scripture is better than Prabhupada's clear direction, his program. He says, Prabhupada says sarcastically, you have made some discovery. Good, but no. Basically, he seems to be conveying that, look, my program should be taken as it is. No need to hunt for scriptural injunctions to cancel my directive to suit your own preferences. This is a gross breach of Vaishnava etiquette, Guru etiquette, disciple etiquette. Now, this is not something theoretical. I've had some exchanges with different devotees that I'm, talking with, and I'm seeing that some of them proudly reject Srila Prabhupada's direct instructions, thinking that their own interpretation and so-called understanding of Vedic injunction is higher than Prabhupada's words and his vision. And in doing so, they end up, becoming what Srila Prabhupada describes as followers of Guru Mara Vidya. And in this one Prabhupada lecture he gives in Vrindavan, he says, there is one Bengali proverb, Guru Mara Vidya. Guru, you learn from him first of all, then kill him. Don't care for Guru. This is demonic. By the grace of Guru, you learn something. Then when you learn something, then you become greater than him. Don't care for Guru. This is demoniac. Even if you have learned something, you must always feel obliged. Don't learn Guru Mara Vidya. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Another letter he writes, I'm also practically finding that if any of our students artificially try to become scholars by associating with unwanted persons, they become victimized. He's saying practically finding means he's seeing the trend. For little, learning is dangerous, especially for Westerners. I'm practically seeing that as soon as they begin to learn a little Sanskrit, immediately they feel that they have become more than their guru. And then the policy is kill Guru.
Wow, that reminds me of an anecdote from Mayapur when the devotees were on a walk and there was a bit of a rise. So one of the devotees stepped up, reached down and helped Prabhupada up the little rise. And when Prabhupada was at the top, he took the hand and tossed it. So this is how the Mayavadis treat their guru. You elevate me, then I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, and it's so that, I mean, he said so many times this whole concept, but it's sad that he's seeing it in his students.
What to speak of now, so many years after his physical departure. We really have to work hard on this point.
Yeah, so we have to really kind of hammer this, that Prabhupada was not pleased with this whole notion that he is not the top authority when it comes to deciding how to do things. And in fact, just recently, a couple of years ago, such a devotee I was talking with, I expressed that, we should try to closely follow Prabhupada's outline program. And he said, no, first we should check if this is in line with Vedic literature. And then he quotes an excerpt from Prabhupada's own purport. To reject Prabhupada himself, he quotes this. He says, the actual center is Shastra, the revealed scripture. If the spiritual master does not speak according to revealed scripture, he is not to be accepted. He's not a saintly person. Shastra is center of all. Now, interestingly, how is this quote in the context of discussing Prabhupada's direction, not a prime example of Guru Mara Vidya?
Wow.
He's implying that Srila Prabhupada himself is no longer to be accepted. Our own Prabhupada should be seen as not a saintly person. So I was very upset. I mean, it's obvious to most of us that Prabhupada is not just another guru. He's the founder Acharya for the next 10,000 years. Prabhupada said these books are the law books for the next 10,000 years. I mean, if he has given clear and repeated direction on how things are to be done, we just need to follow. No need to hunt through scripture to find innovative ways to reject his desire and vision. So, of course, these startling ideas that are coming in front as part of this whole Vaishnavi Diksha Guru conversation, but that's just one part of it. Trend of minimizing Srila Prabhupada is very concerning.
That's a fact. And Prabhupada was seeing it bubble up even in his presence. once a devotee made a flyer promoting a program, and he showed it to Prabhupada, and it said Acharya. And Prabhupada noted it and said, no, founder Acharya. It must always say founder Acharya. Yesterday was Advaita Acharya's appearance day, and on that day, on that topic rather, of Advaita Acharya in 1975, Prabhupada noted he wanted 10 million Acharyas in ISKCON. He wanted all of his disciples, men and women, to become Acharyas. And he defined an Acharya as somebody who knows the philosophy, practices the philosophy, and teaches the philosophy. So then he went into an ecstatic trance in public, which was a very rare event. So the point is that he envisioned many, many Acharyas, but he was very selective and particular that he would be noted as the founder Acharya, not just another guru, but the founder Acharya. So his position is paramount. And even that minor proofreading mistake, omitting the founder, caught Prabhupada's notice and inspired him to give us that very important lesson.
Yeah, he caught that this, even if it's a small trend, it could be the crack that could divide, the crystal, the initial crack. We have to avoid those severe errors. And we are seeing this issue take several forms. I'm noticing, suppose we have a clear outline of what to implement in ISKCON. The detractors are saying, they don't say it directly, right? They don't say, ignore these instructions. They will say, let's harmonize these instructions with Shastra first. It's a slick way of putting forth our own agenda and using scripture to do it. It is said that, scriptures, they're so flexible that anyone with, semi-decent Sanskrit grasp can put forth their case. After all, they're known as Nigama Kalpataru, the desire tree. I mean, even today, there's literally hundreds of different opposing schools of thought, all claiming to be based on Vedanta. This is not a new thing. This has been going on since time immemorial. But for us in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada has made so many practical decisions for us, laid out such clear paths on how he wants to see things done. GBC does this, brahmacharis ideally do this, Grihasthas do that. This is how I want to see things going forward. We don't need to get super creative and look for answers in obscure texts, verses that he didn't even quote and so on.
This idea of harmonizing Prabhupada's instructions with the scripture reminds me of a story he told about a Bengali train. So a man got on the train, he was loaded with packages, but all the seats were taken. So he stood with the packages. Then after one stop, he said to the people, "These packages are so heavy, could you scoot over just a little so I could put them on the bench?" So they moved over. And then the next stop, he said, "I've been standing so long, could you scoot a little more so I could sit on the bench and everyone could just hold one package?" And then a few stops later, all the other passengers are standing holding packages and the man is lying down on the bench asleep. So when we start compromising Prabhupada's teachings, we're just going to harmonize them with the scripture. We're just like, that's a foot in the door. It is a crack in the crystal, as you said, in the integrity of our movement and the unity of our movement. So this recent Vaishnavi Diksha Guru debate it's just one example of how Prabhupada's direct statements are being harmonized or being marginalized, really, through a scriptural aggressive approach, that these are not Vedic things. Prabhupada did so many innovative things that were non-traditional, so many things. And to now look back in hindsight and say, oh, well, he was not following the Vedas, is relegating him to the position of just an ordinary guru, and our own study of Shastra to be on a higher platform than what his direct instructions were saying. That opens the door for us to just pick and choose among any of his instructions. Oh, I want this, I don't want that. And that would allow anyone to promote any sort of agenda in the movement. It was innovative for Malechas, Westerners, and to be a Vaishnavas. That was innovative, and many people fought him about it. So if we are now reverting back to the position that these people who objected are taking, then what is the future of this international society? If the next stop is going to be that Malechas and Yavanas are not Vedic, so how can they be Brahmins? How can they be Vaishnavas? How can they be gurus? That's where this thing is heading if we don't understand that Prabhupada's instructions trump the so-called Vedic injunctions.
Yes. So thank you so much, Prabhu, for kind of distilling all that. And it reminds me of, like, these are all our brothers. We may have difference in opinion, but we are all united under the umbrella of ISKCON. Everybody except Srila Prabhupada. We find ourselves that sometimes we disagree, and maybe to the point where it goes to the pitch of we're shouting at each other. And so there's a nice story. The saint, someone asked the saint, why do we get angry, or why do we shout when we get angry? So he said, when there's too much distance between us, then so to get the other person to hear, we shout. So this anger bubbles up. It's because we have put too much distance between us. We have kind of split ways at some point, and now we find we're still walking, but there's such a gap between us. So maybe we can retrace our steps back to see where the fork in the road, where was that point of divergence that's causing us now to be shouting and finding this gap between us. And so, it begs the question about the solution. What is the solution to this impasse that we have on disagreements, whatever they may be, but on how to apply Prabhupada's instructions, how we move forward, whether it's Vaishnava Diksha Guru or whatever other thing that comes up in the future, that how to keep Prabhupada in the center. What are some very practical, Prabhu, in your experience and in your vision, do you see some practical solutions so we can again stay united while maintaining diversity in our opinions?
Well, Srila Prabhupada said that the annual meeting in Mayapur was one solution, that devotees should come together and chant Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari in the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and share preaching experiences. We can understand too that, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the cultural differences between different parts of the world will be striking. And to try to expect every single part of the world will practice Krishna consciousness in exactly the same way is impossible. It's a strong word he rejected, as a fool's dictionary word. But he used it in that purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita to describe this understanding of imposing the same values on everybody. So we can come together if we just accept this simple instruction from Srila Prabhupada. The way Krishna consciousness is preached or practiced in this part of the world will naturally differ from the way it's practiced elsewhere. And that mood of acceptance and tolerance is easy when we ourselves are enjoying our own spiritual lives. We see the joy that Prabhupada has brought to other people in other places, and we appreciate that. It's actually an offense to consider, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's one of the aparads is to consider a Vaishnava associated with one particular part of the world. The devotees are united in our joy in serving Prabhupada, our joy in sharing Krishna consciousness, our joy in learning and reading from Prabhupada's books. So the Mayapur meeting is good. Regional meetings of all kinds. I think of Indradumna Maharaj's Polish tour, or the various Kirtan Sanghas in various parts of the world. And if there's really a strong sense of difference, we really should close that gap and be able to meet together. Like if invite somebody with a differing point of view to your Sangha and hear from them. And this kind of respectful discussion is called vada. It's where two parties respectfully come together and discuss aspects of philosophy objectively. So another practical solution is to learn this technique of vada, which is used in reference to hermeneutics. Hermeneutics means, of course, the analysis of scripture. And without understanding the etiquette of respectful discussion, then it's like the Christians say, both read Bible day and night. I read black and you read white. It is Prabhupada that allows us to avoid this sort of scriptural debate that really has no end. It is following the Acharya, the founder Acharya, that will keep us together. So these are some practical suggestions. Again, collectively meet and individually raise our game a little bit to understand that we're on the same team and people have legitimate differences and we should be tolerant of them and appreciate them as Vaishnavas.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. And perhaps, like you mentioned, like we can all engage in Prabhupada's service together, and maybe there may even be slight differences in how I'll implement it in my area and how you may choose to implement it in your area, but we still come together and remain brothers. There's really no need to split. Some practical ways perhaps you can share on that whole application of this regional or cultural sensitivity differences. Maybe you can highlight some of those.
Well, yes. In the past year or two, the GBC, dealing with divisive issues, came up with a policy called cultural sensitivity that would allow various regions of the world to decide on issues such as their own spiritual leadership. So to me, that is our only path forward as ISKCON is growing in these various diverse parts of the world. I think that strategy was just brilliant and appropriate, and really our only means for progress if we're going to deepen our reach in the world. Cultural sensitivity means that people can adjust based on their regional preferences, on their regional needs. They can adjust policies, they can adjust practices within a certain limit. We don't compromise on 4 regulator principles. We don't compromise on 16 rounds. These things are inviolable. Another inviolable premise is Trinadapi Sunichena Torori Vasahishnuna. They're not ripping each other apart, but treating each other with respect. If we do those simple things everywhere in the world, there's plenty of room for diversity in each part of the world.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. And I think maybe we can kind of bring us all together and refocus on this concept that, how Srila Prabhupada is the center, how we can understand his word to be really the guiding factor. So maybe if you think we had some quotes that we wanted to share, Prabhupada's quotes, I'm just going to share them on the screen.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, there's so many references to this point where the scripture is understood through the guru. And if a guru is deviating, like Sukracharya, then Bali Maharaj rejected him, and therefore he's considered a great authority in Krishna consciousness. But by the same token, if we inappropriately reject our guru, then it is us who has to suffer the results. So the question of which is priority, the Vedic injunctions or the Guru's instructions, this is addressed in the Bhagavad Gita for starters. There's many verses where Krishna admonishes Arjuna to go beyond his concepts of Vedic injunctions and do what his Guru, Krishna, was directing him to do. In this 253, Prabhupada writes, the Krishna conscious person should not be disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas. One has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. There's another verse which comes to mind that Prabhupada quoted so often. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata garau tasya katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. You can probably think of another verse, right? This is one that you enjoy.
Right. This one that I particularly found Prabhupada emphasizing quite a bit. It is quoted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, but it's from the Mahabharata. Mahaprabhu quoted it, and Prabhupada would say it quite often. Tarko pratishtha shrutayo vibhinna nasa vrishir yasya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gatah sapantha. That, Mahaprabhu continued, dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion doesn't differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajanas advocate. So for us, we don't need to look for another Mahajana. It is without a doubt, Prabhupada is our Mahajana. And it says right over here that the Vedas are variegated. You can't come to the conclusion. And this is said by Mahaprabhu himself. So what Prabhupada emphasized, and Prabhupada would quote Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his scripture. We can't debate with Prabhupada that, oh, Prabhupada, you quoted Chaitanya Charitamrita, but Vedic injunction says this. No, it doesn't matter. Whatever came out from Prabhupada's lotus mouth, right? We even say, from him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. And my only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. That is our Mahajana Vakya. Especially if he has said something clearly and repeatedly, we don't need to then endlessly debate something. So this is very, brilliantly laid out by Prabhupada himself, emphasized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, brought out by all the scriptures. The Upanishads say it, the Bhagavad Gita says it. And, for us, Srila Prabhupada's word is final. And we hope that more and more devotees continue to recognize that. And we hope that that becomes and remains the unifying anchor in these stormy times when there may be some differences and maybe even threats to our movement and our unity. But this is very important that we come back to our shelter, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Kalakantha Prabhu. If you have some parting words.
Well, Srila Prabhupada left us everything we need. And we have this big challenge now to show our love for him by how we cooperate. The task of the GBC is very difficult. They have many competing voices to satisfy. So this approach they've taken of cultural sensitivity, I believe, is wise and can allow everybody to have their simultaneous independence and unity. The very thing that Prabhupada said should be the motto of our movement, e pluribus unum, in one from many one, unity and diversity. There's a saying in English that you should stay with the one who invited you to the dance. So the idea is a person who has good manners will always acknowledge the person who has allowed them entrance into the loving event. In our case, into the spiritual world. On one occasion, Prabhupada was saying that when you arrive at the gates of the spiritual world, the gatekeepers will laugh, and then you say, "No, I'm with Prabhupada." "Oh, wait, Prabhupada, okay, come on in." So we had better hold on to our Guru Maharaj's lotus feet and not think that we have surpassed him by our scholarship or our accomplishments. None of us would be here without Srila Prabhupada. So it is he who will keep us together if we just have the courtesy and the etiquette and the humility to remain attached to his lotus feet for the duration of our lives. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Kalakantha Prabhu. And thank you very much, dear devotees, for joining and watching on this Unity in Diversity channel. And we'll have more and more conversations like this. We look forward to discussing this more with Kalakantha Prabhu and other senior devotees. Please share your comments and your feedback on the comment section of the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and let us know if we can improve in any way. And we hope to be serving all the devotees of ISKCON and everyone in the world by glorifying His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Rama, Rama